Boo! Ah! Gotcha! Stop it! Why are you like this? I am trying to help you, Shara. You're so mean to me. I'm trying to toughen you up. Toughen up? I literally sit around in a rock suit half the time. Sure, you're tough on the outside, but are you tough on the inside? What, you mean like my heart? No, I mean like your code. My what?
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, unfortunately, no matter how much we wish it were the case, not all monsters are created equally. Not in design quality, not in depth, and absolutely not in power level. To the point where there are entirely different rankings of monsters that the guild actively applies to them. But when we get to the most difficult monsters, the Elder Dragons, surely there must be some weak links, right? Today, my hungry hunters, I present to you my list of the top 5 easiest Elder Dragons in all of Monster Hunter, with a disclaimer here that these are all my opinion, and honestly I wouldn't call a single monster on this list like actually easy compared to lesser monsters, as even the easiest of Elder Dragons can put up quite the fight, except for siege monsters, and that is why siege monsters will not count for this. I mean, how can you compare something like Lao Shen Lung to something like Kirin? It's like apples and oranges.
Bitch, that phrase don't make no sense, why can't fruit be compared?
So without further ado, let's begin today's list with
Number 5. Tei Ostra.
And this should immediately tell you what the difficulty standard is to start off with. I mean, Tei Ostra is not an easy foe by any means, and yet still made the very edge of the list of the easiest elders out there. And to be fair to Mr. Flame Emperor himself, he has even gotten more powerful and dangerous, and therefore more difficult in Iceborne, with the addition of his face cuddle attack from March Tempered, and the little fire volcano that he gets. But unfortunately, it doesn't affect fighting him too much past the first new Master Rank encounter with him, or maybe the second one as you adjust to the changes, as one thing for Tei Ostra is a constant. I'm on fire! Okay, that, and telegraphs. Tei Ostra is a really big fan of telegraphing, and his attacks generally cover small enough areas that it is super easy to dodge them if you recognize what he is doing. And then the ones that are big and cover large areas have super long timers, and again, even bigger telegraphs. And honestly, you could originally have made the argument to me that a supernova is difficult, but it's just one of those things that once you know it, it takes about 5 seconds to deal with, then it's just out of the way, no one dies, it's easy. Most of his attacks boil down to spreading fire, and as much as being on fire is annoying, it is probably the second least annoying element behind Dragon when you're using a non-elemental set, as you just have to roll to put it out. Not even consuming an item or anything like that, it's simple, it doesn't really take you too far out of the fight, as you can roll around right next to the monster just fine, and in this case, he does let you do that a lot. He has a decent amount of super close range attacks around his face, and a lot of good long range attacks that he can pull out, but for the most part, his sides are just an incredibly safe place to be. So while he may not be the easiest monster in the game, I do think with all of this combined, Tei Ostra definitely deserves to be on this list in some capacity.
Number 4. Camellias.
It's honestly actually really nice and refreshing to talk about Camellias for a moment. I feel like he never actually comes up in videos, regardless of how odd it is that he isn't in Monster Hunter World. I mean, originally part of the basic Elder trio with Tei Ostra and Gishala Deora, he's the only one left behind in the old world, and that is honestly a real shame because of just how cool he is. But unfortunately, no matter how cool he is, at least in the old world, his fight is pretty much a piece of cake.
Including the Poison Cake secret attack.
He has some ranged poison capabilities in the form of globs he can fire and a bit of breathing and spray out, but as long as you carry antidotes, these will for the most part be pretty manageable. And his physical attacks just as a whole are super easy to deal with, even the whippy sticky tongue, as the way that he attacks with it is very predictable and slow, like most of his attacks, and that is probably one of the main things that I would say for his lack of difficulty is his speed, as it is just easy to keep moving around him and avoid the hitboxes of his attack with just movement speed, not even having to actively dodge them. The one exception to this is the attack he just starts doing after he sprays mist everywhere, where he starts spewing poison breath just out in a full 180-degree arc in front of him, just in this weird pattern, and if that hits you, it is a pretty massive amount of damage on top of poisoning you, but this attack happens at a predictable moment in the fight, and the rest of the fight as a whole doesn't present too much of a challenge, so I feel pretty comfortable leaving Mr. Camellias here at number 4.
Number 3.
One more, that's it. It's a good thing I found these mushrooms. I was fucking starving.
Black Veil Val Hazak.
Oh, Black Veil, I feel sort of bad for you because you are legitimately a significant amount harder than base Val Hazak from base World. But unfortunately, there is no just Master Rank base Val Hazak, so it felt a bit unfair to compare him to Master Rank creatures, and as a result, here is his Master Rank variant. And to be fair to him, Black Veil has a couple of neat tricks in his kit, including the ability to frequently drain the life of hunters afflicted by the miasma debuff, and the crazy upgrade of being able to fire beams both from the left and the right.
He said they go both ways.
The fight is still super manageable with a stack of nullberries, but even more so with the miasma resistance skill, which I guess you could say is a touch unfair to include for a monster's difficulty. I mean, why not talk about poison resistance for Camellias then, right? Well, the simple answer is being immune to poison doesn't neuter Camellias the same way that being immune to miasma nearly trivializes a lot of Black Veil Val's fight, though again, still nowhere close to as big an effect as it has against normal Val back in base World. And that skill's existence in Massive Presence is most of why he's far up on this list, honestly, and just for peace of mind, for those who don't like me including this skill in the consideration, even without miasma resistance, I would probably have him back at number 5 on here, and just move the last 2 up a spot, so there you go.
Number 2. Tallis.
And this one is just so disappointing to have to talk about in this way all the time. I mean, I want to love Tallis. I want to love a monster capable of sieging a castle, winning and decimating a civilization. I want to enjoy every second of what is touted as the god of all monsters, but I just can't. If I complained about the speed of Camellias, it would be absolutely ridiculous to not point out the same issue here for Tallis. He is so slow, like, he is this slow to do just about anything at any point just ever. And then when he does do stuff, it is either piddly little claw swipes or tail slaps or fireballs. And don't get me wrong, some of his fireballs are like slightly dangerous, but at the end of the day, if the only real attacks a monster has are frontal breath, frontal ball, bite, claw, and tail swipe, they're gonna have a real rough time against anyone who works out the most simple idea of positioning. And sort of like Tei Ostra, I think Tallis is also super easy to just sit on his side and not actually get hit by anything, but to an even greater degree due to how ridiculously slow he is. And honestly, I guess part of my brain is still partially comparing Tallis in game to Tallis in lore, and I guess because of that stark contrast, even if he wasn't just mechanically relatively easy, which I believe him to be, I think he would still feel easy, just because he doesn't feel as hard as Tallis should.
Number 1.
We were at the beach. Everybody had matching towels. Somebody went under a dock, and there they saw a rock. But it wasn't a rock. It was a
Shara Ishvalda.
And I feel sort of bad for poor old Shara Ishvalda here, and maybe this is a bit hasty or recency bias or any number of those things, but I feel like Shara Ishvalda is one of the most learnable fights that has ever existed in the series. The entire first phase is basically just handed to you by environmental traps if you use them right, and the only real objective is to just break parts while avoiding very, very slow and predictable attacks. And then the second phase does kick it up a bit, but unfortunately even the Death Star laser only takes out hunters if they are standing as still as the planet Alderaan.
There are laser blasts all around us!
And here the only thing that really presents much of a threat is when Shara just decides to ping off a really well-targeted single finger air blast that nearly always hits its target. And then there's like that little thing where he claws under his belly, but that's only until you learn that attack. Once you learn that attack, it's really easy to dodge and really easy to see coming. Otherwise, you have a lot of easy to dodge patterns, and don't even get me started on the spirit bomb attack. I mean, yes, it is cool, and yes, it does a ton of damage if it does hit you, but if we're talking about difficulty, the wind-up animation to this attack gives you enough time to do a lap around the arena 3 times before taking a nap and then waking up to still see the attack slowly going off a mile away from you. This attack, at least the speed, is essentially created to throw people off guard the first time they fight the monster. It's, to be fair, the first time you see it, the first time you have to work it out. And of course, that's how they designed it. But unfortunately, the result is when you refight Shara Ishvalda a couple of times, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, he just becomes, in my my opinion, the most predictable Elder Dragon to fight, with slow attacks and a surprisingly forgiving amount of time between attacks, with an arena that is straight up designed to make him even easier, just for a little cherry on top too. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been my list of the top 5 easiest Elder Dragons in all of Monster Hunter. Do you agree with my choices? Which monsters would you replace, and with what? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or important news about the kingdom and Camellias. Rage, Cotton, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.